I just finished the Shadows of Luclin Grinding / Leveling Guide, and I think I added about 82 camps to the previous guide, and this is available on EverQuestGuides.com in the leveling section, Luclin Leveling Guide. And for those of you that aren't familiar with this, I have marked pretty much every camp in the game. There'll be some things that are missing, but I went through every zone up to Luclin now, and I killed something at every camp, and then I waited for respawn to get a timer. So the key benefit to this guide is that you can view the camp, but also the camp size and the respawn time. So for Shadows of Luclin, we're going to be looking at a lot of new zones being added, but a lot of them won't be used by anybody other than people doing power leveling or leveling up alts, since everybody's level 60. Most of the people will be farming AA and looking for loot. The most important part for this, because it's not a brand new Luclin launch where everybody starts at level 1, is to sort this by levels. And we'll see some of the camps in here that are going to be marked as popularity 10. And basically, they're going to be that popular because of the level range, where you're going to be able to farm these and get AA. Now, just because Luclin is out, that doesn't mean that everything from the old expansions will be obsolete. There'll be places in the hole that are still bumping, those undead towers where the mobs range from level 55 to 60. There'll be places in Chardok, Old Seb, and some of the Vilius zones, Siren's Grotto. But for the most part, some of the higher level zones like Umbral Plains and Grieg's End is going to be a massively packed zone. I think I did Grieg's End as part of my power leveling route, but it's just one of the best zones in the game for this era. And even places like SSRA in the basement will be pretty popular as far as farming AA. And a lot of people will be chasing the Lucid Shards for their keys through Vexthal. I did put some of the areas in that actually have raids at them. SSRA is example of one, but also there's some places in the Akiva runes. And if these bosses aren't up, let me sort by Akiva runes here. So if these bosses aren't up, it's actually not a bad spot. It's not going to be the high level range, but high enough to get AA off. And there was a lot of mobs in some of these areas with a decent respawn time. And if you were a really powerful group, you could just go from area to area and just clear in there all day. Put popularity at 5 because I don't feel like a lot of people are going to be in there doing it. They're probably going to just spawn instances of Grieg's End. But if you remember back in the very old days before they had instant zones, which might be even hard to imagine now, there was only one version of the camp available. Somebody was at the camps in Grieg's End. That was it. There was no picks. You waited to get in. And so places like Akiva Runes and Umbral Plains became good alternative zones because it's basically, if you think about that, there's probably only 20 high-level camps in the entire Luclin expansion that you would use to farm AA. That was a major problem that they addressed when they started making zones being instanced, because now you could have 40 copies of Grieg's End. I think that was a really good fix that they put into the game, but I did include some of these other zones just in case you don't want to do the traditional Grieg's End, or for whatever reason you want a little change up. Now with the Shadows of Luclin coming up, this to me was one of the expansions where I actually didn't quit the game. I think when I played 3 other times, I got to a point like after a month or 2, I quit probably during each of the original releases for one reason or another. The big thing for me with Luclin, and I don't understand why it's not released with the actual initial TLP release, whether it's Kunark or Classic, is a way to get to the Bazaar or to set up traders. To me, I did not want to spend any time negotiating in East Commons Tunnel or trying to sell my stuff. So I actually have a lot of stuff on a lot of characters that I just didn't sell. And that was remedied somewhat by having traders, although running a trader full time does get exhausting too. But as far as Teague with that population and trying to trade in the East Commons Tunnel with max capacity zone and people spamming, I mean, that was nearly impossible to actually follow along and find what you're looking for. And that's where they had some of those TLP auction sites that would track and log the text. You had to almost use one of those to search and see who was selling and then message them and see if they had it. But Luclin bringing the trader thing is another step closer to bringing a good quality of life adjustment to the game that was much needed. It's too bad they didn't go the full auction house route like World of Warcraft, but then they kind of have the offline traders. The other big thing coming up in Luclin is the Nexus and the ability to freely travel. Some people don't like this. The hardcore old-fashioned players don't like this. I watched one video where it pretty much states that it feels like the world's getting smaller. The world's too big. And I don't know how else to say that, but there's no reason to run 15, 30 minutes across the zone. How is that fun? That reminds me of the daily quests they put in World of Warcraft where you felt compelled to do them. You spend a good 30 minutes to an hour of your day, and it's not fun. It's basically like you're at work, and that's how it started to feel in EverQuest. So yes, the world is big, but I feel like adding easier transportation allowed people to explore more of it. If you remember in the initial Classic launch, And before there was people being able to power level and get easy items, like I spent all my time on one side of the continent because I refused to try to make that run or couldn't make that run or didn't have time to make that run across. And that left my initial experience, my individual experience playing the game is kind of like I didn't get to explore all the zones because the world was too big. Travel is another quality of life feature. I don't know if by planes of knowledge, if people have said they've gone too far. I do think how the original game was made where it relied on wizards and druids, that kind of took away from that class. But then having them have the ability to get to places where you couldn't easily get to, whether through it's the guild hall, a plane of knowledge stone, or a nexus, I think that kept the unique aspect in the game. But I'm honestly surprised, and I don't know because I don't play live, but I'm surprised that there aren't flying mounts released in the game. To some degree, they don't have to travel fast, but there's no reason for it anymore to have to try to make a long run across without dying. I mean, yeah, that was kind of the excitement. I remember back in the old Kithakor Forest days trying to get to high hold or high pass, and you have to like sit there and check the time and wait till it wasn't nighttime because you were so low level you could draw aggro, you ran up against the wall. Sometimes you died and you got pissed. And that was kind of fun back in 1999, but here we are in 2024. There's a million other games, a million other things to do. You know, we're not dial-up internet and this is the only game out. There's just so many things to do that a lot of that stuff is just not necessary. And especially considering that they do have Project 99 and emulation servers where it is hardcore like that. I feel like that's a good outlet for people to go to. They could make a TLP that is hardcore like that. I don't know how many players it would actually get, but I'm not against it. I just think the quality of life improvements in Luclin was huge. And that brings me to the final point is alternate advancement. So I was never a big raider. And what happened is there were only so many things that you could buy in the game that was tradable back in the day. Not talking about teak, but tradable loot. And up to Luclin, like if you were a tank, you had to have a Blade of Carnage, and that cost a lot of money. And so we'd spend a lot of time farming that stuff. But once you got that item, there were only so many items you could get without raiding. And if you didn't want to raid, which I was heavily against it back in the day, I just really liked doing things with group and exploring the area. Once you get to a certain point where there's no more groupable gear you can get or buy, there's really nothing else for you to do in the game but raid. But if you don't want to raid, then you're pretty much done with the game. Alternate advancement really allowed me to continue playing the game and improving upon my group geared character in a very meaningful way. And although later on it becomes kind of like a monotonous grind to get AA to do raids, like when it was initially released and up and even Planes of Power, it was just like you could constantly watch your character improve without having to get raid gear. Obviously you get raid gear and throw the AA on there, you become even more powerful, but it was a really unique feature in the sense that it kept people grouping, kept people playing, getting extra experience. Otherwise, even the raiders, like once they get their raid gear and their max level, like they're done. And you can notice that in the population drops on these TLPs. Once they've completed the expansion and gotten all their gear, it's really hard to keep raids running. And toward the end, a lot of people just disappear. So AA, I think, was another necessary quality of life improvement to keep people in the game. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And if you've been watching me run around Luclin in the background video here, I have to say, I cannot believe I used a paladin for this. These things that I'm fighting have so much HP. Even though it was tough for them to kill me, it took a lot longer than it should have, especially to go into some of the deep areas inside of the higher level zones. I think I was in Umbral Plains for quite some time because I got attacked by every single Dark Assassin and then all the Dark Masters, and they just kept training. And I probably fought them for 20 or 30 minutes straight. And then Doomshade spawned, so I just fought him too. But I can't believe I used the Paladin for this. If you're interested in multi-boxing on the TLP, or you're interested in how to power level in Luclin, check out these videos.
We got P99, we got TLP, we got private servers and tests that's free. Some of us pay, some of us don't, some of us play, some of us won't. Did you just break my mess? Did you just train me? Did you just miss a healing? Are you gonna rest me? And please I need a sow, and please I need a rest. Please I need that sword, I'll take what you got.